it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. Operation Appletree, Chapter 4. Thomas Campbell, with a look of curious confusion, eagerly put on his glasses and inspected the photo that I'd slid across his desk. He only looked at it for a fraction of a second before he began shaking and sobbing. Where did you get this? He stuttered through his tears. We obtained it through another line of inquiry in our investigation. Campbell glared at the image. He looked like he was staring at a ghost. Thomas, is this the boy who was in the video? I asked him in a serious tone. His tears were all the confirmation that anyone would need, but I needed him to say it. He could barely speak, he just nodded. I'm going to need a verbal response for the recording. Yes, that's him, he managed to utter. Okay, thank you. Interview terminated, I said, turning off the tape and putting it back in the case, whilst I gave Campbell a minute to gather himself together. Well, officially I can't disclose investigation specifics, but I think you have a right to know. So, OTR, the photo is of an 11-year-old boy named Ryan Thomas. Oh, the fact that Campbell and the boy shared a name only seemed to add to his distraught. Who was he? Campbell asked, sniffling. He was a kid who was adopted by a family from the Lawrence Home for Boys. There's strong evidence to believe the home is being used as a market for a pedophile ring, facilitated and organized by the OCG, who are currently blackmailing you. We checked the registers. The adoption never happened. The kid's been missing ever since, I said, shaking my head. I looked down at the floor. But now, well, we know what happened to him. This kid, he's, just one of many, I said hesitantly. Many what? Campbell asked naively. Many other unregistered adoptions. Many other children never seen again. We don't know if all the kids who go missing are used in blackmail attacks like in your case, but they are a loose end that needs tying up. And these people don't like wasting opportunities to obtain more money or control. Campbell teared up once more, frantically looking up at the roof as if trying to find whatever god was up there. Have they contacted you recently? I asked. No, not heard anything. Maybe they've left me alone? He speculated with hope. I gave him a sympathetic smile. I really don't think that's likely, Mr. Campbell. The fact you're alive shows they aren't done with you. Detective Hansen was just as useful to them as you, and when he wasn't, despite refusing to talk to the police or the FBI, they made sure he never spoke to anyone ever again. The seriousness of my tone wasn't lost on Campbell. His face fell into his hands. So, what do I do when they call? He asked reluctantly, swiping his hands through his hair. Well, you call me straight away. Here, take this, I instructed, handing him an electronic device. This is a bug finder. It's what I scanned the room with before we began the interview. Given the level of power and reach these people have, we can't be too careful. Every and any time that we speak, whether it be phone or in person, scan the room without fail. Any beeps, then, well, just leave the room and find somewhere independent to you and call me. We'll tell you what to do. Campbell looked down at the device intensely, clearly wondering how he's ended up where he has. Now remember, when they call, keep them talking for a minute. The line is tapped, so we'll be able to hear what they say to you. But if the call time goes over a minute, then the better triangulation we get on the call. We'll be able to find them. At the very least, it'll be somewhere to focus our surveillance. Campbell seemed to understand. He just nodded with a vacant stare at the bug finder. Right, I'll see myself out, I said, making my way to the door. I opened it, and just before I closed it behind me, I looked back. Campbell was still sat in the same position as he had for the past few minutes. Thomas, I called back to him, using his first name to show I wasn't addressing him as a federal agent, but as a human being. He looked up at me, We will get these bastards, I promise you, I assured him sternly. He gave me a half smile back, and then I exited the building. Later that afternoon, I was back at HQ briefing the team. We had produced an evidence and leads board on the main wall of the briefing room. I'd replaced the photo of the Ryan Thomas back with the rest of the other images of missing boys that Ruth had put together yesterday. I also pinned some tape, connecting the image to the photo of Thomas Campbell. Me doing this in front of the team was a demonstration of my findings this morning. So, I've spoken with Thomas Campbell. He's confirmed that Ryan Thomas is the boy whose rape and murder is being used as a blackmail tool to control him into falsifying those 3 autopsy reports. Which means now we have the Lawrence Home for Boys governor, Ian Malik, on conspiracy to murder. That's a much bigger bargaining chip than embezzling state funds and fraud. He's greedy. Greedy people don't like prison more than anyone. Too accustomed to the finer things. So, Sarah, I want you to have that construction account frozen, as well as Mr. Mallick's personal accounts. Then, tomorrow, myself and Ruth will go down there and bring him in. Try and turn the screw with Ryan Thomas. If he can tell us who took Ryan, then we know who's blackmailing Campbell. And then, when we get the location from the call traces, we can bring these guys in, and boom, we have a huge chance of finding these high-level links between criminals and corrupt officials. In the meantime, Detective Marshall, I'd like you to go down to Overland Park. Go talk to the girls on Metcalf Avenue. Wear your civvies. Look for a girl named Kim. Mixed race, curvy, 5'8", 125, 135 pounds. Red curly, shoulder blade length hair. Apparently, wore large golden hooped earrings on all 3 occasions. I instructed. Which 3 occasions? He asked curiously. I nodded, subtly acknowledging his valid question. The 3 occasions on which Thomas Campbell engaged in sexual activity with a prostitute. We saved a sample of his semen in order to pass on to the OCG. During my interview with him in the next room, this is the name and description he gave. He also told me on all 3 occasions she took him to the South Creek Motel, where they engaged in sexual activities for an hour. And again, on all 3 occasions they entered room 412. Campbell said she never paid. She simply picked the key up from the front desk. Whoever's running her must rent the room for the day. So, Martinez, Michaels, you get down to the motel, wait in the parking lot. When Marshall attains Kim for the hour, you 2 gain access to the room and hide in the bathroom. When Marshall has her inside, lock the door, and then you guys will have just about an hour to break her and get her to talk. I instructed. Marshall, Martinez, and Michaels all grinned and nodded with enthusiasm. What are we doing about Detective Ryan and Officer Patrick? Sarah questioned. I hinted a sense of annoyance in her voice. Don't worry, Sarah. I've not forgotten about them. I've got them under covert surveillance as we speak, I assured her. She wasn't satisfied. But these 2 are on the take. They were the 2 officers in charge of Haley's disappearance. They made sure she remained that way for nearly 5 years. These guys have been receiving payments from an undisclosed source ever since. They must know something, she ranted. Detective Hansen was under their command even longer, and he didn't know who was running him. I guarantee these guys don't either, and if we move on them now, they will say nothing and these bastards will know we're onto them. We need to know more about the people we're dealing with and how they operate. When we know that, we can try to turn Ryan and Patrick into informants and track down bigger fish. If we can get to Kim and Mallick, we'll also have the ammo we need. Her annoyance faded and she nodded firmly. Well, I'll get those accounts frozen, she assured me. Gave her a friendly wink. She was going to make a phenomenal agent, just needed a bit of guidance. She reminded me of myself, before I met Bill Johnson. Chapter 5. The only noise in the car was the sound of the asphalt passing underneath the wheels and the wind flying past the windows. There was an awkward silence between me and Ruth. It was difficult between us right now. We'd agreed prior to coming down to KC that whatever we had between us would have to be put on one side until after the job. was highly unprofessional for two agents to engage in a relationship, especially when they were working the same case. So, I said, breaking the ice. So, Ruth mocked awkwardly. What do you think of the great Detective Marshall? I quizzed, and Ruth chuckled. He's very good indeed, she answered deliberately. I shot her a concerned look, and she couldn't help chuckle. At his job, of course. What's wrong, James? Not jealous, are you? She asked teasingly. I grinned and shook my head. No. Good, because there's no need to be. He's not my type, she answered more seriously. So, what is your type? I probed, a cockiness to my tone, and Ruth grinned. I feel my answer would break our agreement, Supervisory Special Agent Rodriguez, she answered playfully. I nodded and smirked in agreement. James? Yeah? Insecurity's not a good look on you, she teased further, and we both began laughing as I frantically denied being insecure. When the moment was stopped by my cell phone ringing, I looked at the caller ID. Speak of the devil, huh? I quipped, and I answered the call. Hey, Skip. Just letting you know, I have eyes on Kim right now, or at least someone matching her description. Just wanted your advice on how to proceed in engaging her, Marshall said. In what way? I asked curiously. Well, Martinez and Michaels reckon I should ask her if she's called Kim. Say a friend recommended her. This way we confirm her identity, but... Well, I cut him off mid-sentence. Oh, absolutely not. If we take that approach, she'll get suspicious. She'll ask who recommended her, and we can't say Thomas Campbell. If you give her a name that she doesn't know, she'll become suspicious, I commanded. Great mind, Soup. I had the same concerns, he said in agreement. Are there any other girls matching the description? I probed. Nope, not that I can see anyway, he replied. Okay, take one more cruise around the area. If she's the only nominal matching the description, then engage her. Try not to ask her name. Try to get her to offer it, voluntary. She'll be less suspicious. If she doesn't take you to room 412, then we have our target. If she takes you to room 412, then we have our target. If she takes you elsewhere, then you have my permission to press her more on her identity. Let me know how you get on. Send me a text with just the letter K if you have her. We're just pulling up at her home now. All right, glad I checked in with you. Good luck with Mallick, he said, wishing us well. Yep, see you back at base, I responded bluntly. I ended the call as Ruth eyed me with narrow eyes. We're 25 minutes from Lawrence, she stated suspiciously, and I grinned. You're right. He's good at his job. I just don't like cocky detectives, I confessed. Oh, you're just jealous, Ruth teased once more. My grin disappeared. No, look, it's just something about him. Ruth looked concerned. She placed a hand on my knee. I looked down at it. God, I'd forgotten how good it felt when she touched me, and I met her gaze. James, I think you've been on too many cases involving corrupt officers. You once told me the Swarm had 150 dirty cops in their ranks. Hell, they were even run by the FBI's director, for crying out loud. Then there was Frank Adam, Jim Mellor, Detective Hansen, now potentially Ryan and Patrick. I think you've honestly just seen a successful detective who's cocky and wears flashy suits, and you're simply, well, out of habit assuming he's dirty. To be perfectly honest, I can't even blame you. But I think after this task force finishes, you should take a break. At least from these types of cases anyway, she advised sincerely. Well, that's the thing, Ruth. The corruption seems to be just rearing its ugly head no matter which case I investigate, I said, shaking my head. Ruth looked down. It was hard to argue. You've just got to have faith that there are some good officers out there, like you, Bill Quince. Both of us looked forward. The guilt was still there between us. Yeah, and I'm sure you know plenty more too, Ruth added, quickly moving past it. Okay, I promise. I'll be more trusting, I assured her, and she smiled appreciatively. I smiled back. We walked through the visitors' entrance of the Lawrence Home for Boys. The old building didn't look like it had ever had any construction in its 37-year history, let alone $350,000 worth in the last decade. We pressed the buzzer, and after a few seconds, a female voice came over the speaker. "Hello?" "Supervisory Special Agent Rodriguez and Agent Ruth Mallick. Here to see Governor Mallick." He's a little busy right now. Do you have an appointment?" "Don't worry, darling. We'll wait." I stood my ground, and a few seconds later, the door buzzed open. We pushed it open and made our way inside. We made our way into the waiting area by the front desk. The receptionist was on the phone, and by the sounds of it, she was getting an earful. "I don't know, sir. I've contacted the bank and they... Yes, sir. That's what I'm trying to tell you. They say that the accounts are frozen, and they'll remain so pending the outcome of an investigation." She winced as whoever was on the phone, I'm guessing Ian Malik, gave her some more grief. "Well, I don't know, sir. They say they can't say." Her head fell into her hands again, and as Mallick took his frustrations out on her, she struggled to get a word in. I snapped my fingers, getting the girl's attention, and she looked up. "That's why we're here," I said, widening my eyes, indicating to the girl to let us through. Yes, sir, sir," she snapped, and she took a deep breath. "There's 2 suits here to see you. They say they're here about your account. No, they're not from the bank. I think they're from the FBI. Okay, I'll send them in." She placed the phone back on the receiver and glared at us both. "He says go through." Ruth and I rose from our seats and walked forcefully through to the governor's office. Ian Malik was a rough-looking man. He was no oil painting, that's for sure. His teeth were crooked, chipped and yellow from years of pulling on cigarettes. His nose was long, pointy, and almost goblin-like. He had dark, curly bangs which framed his scowling face. He possessed a small, dinky build, dressed in cheap slacks and a white button-down shirt, which looked like it had been worn for the 4th time this week. He docked his cigarette out into the ashtray after a large drag. As we sat down across from him, he blew the smoke in our direction. "So it's you wee pricks I got to thank for my money being frozen?" he asked sarcastically, a deep and broad Scottish accent, which, if I wasn't mistaken, seemingly originated from the region of Aberdeen. "That's correct, yes," I responded calmly. His calculating eyes glared at us for a handful of very awkward and intense seconds. "So, why have you done that then, he asked, and he smirked at his cold arrogance. "Because, Mr. Mallick, that's what the federal government do when you're suspected of a crime. Strongly suspected of a crime," I told him, very slowly and deliberately. "Do I, need my solicitor here?" he asked threateningly. "Depends on who your solicitor is, I guess," I replied. "What's that supposed to mean?" he asked with a cocked head. "Because if you were to, let's say, be represented by someone who has a similar interest, I wouldn't want you to have any, conflicts." "Conflicts?" Mallick quizzed. "Yeah, you know, of interests." I gave him a look waiting for the penny to drop. Mallick grunted a grin at us. "I don't know what you're talking about, Agent," he said in a manner that was obviously showing that he knew what we were talking about. "But, hypothetically, what makes you think I'd want to grass, just because you pricks have frozen my bank account? I am hardly Richard Branson, you know," he added, with a disgusting, smarmy tone. There was something about his demeanor that suggested he thought he was untouchable. Ruth smirked. "No, you're right. You're not Richard Branson, Mr. Mallick, but Brandon McCann, on the other hand." Ruth's tone and her cocky expression told Ian Malik that, in fact, he wasn't untouchable. "I have no idea who that is," he asserted, but a little less cocky this time. "Oh, really? That's strange, because he's been your construction manager. He's apparently worked for you for over 10 years. I honestly think I should contact my solicitor." Mallick was now panicked and rumbling in his desk, presumably for a phone. "I would think very carefully about that, Mr. Mallick," I demanded, halting Mallick's attempts at making contact with anyone. "Because believe me, embezzling funds from the government is just the tip of a very big iceberg." My tone told Mallick that we knew everything. He placed his phone back in his drawer and folded his arms. "So then, what happens now?" Mallick sulked. "Well, if I were you, I would come with us. I wouldn't tell anyone where you're going." We began leading Ian Malik out of the building towards our vehicle. Just as Mallick was instructing the girl on the front desk that he was going down to the bank to clear up this cock-up, as he put it, my cell phone chimed. It was a text. I opened it. It simply said, K. Chapter 6. The sound of the tape recorder toned for a few seconds before stopping. Ian Malik still had his arms folded in that stroppy, sulky, "How dare you keep me in this room for 3 hours with just one lukewarm coffee?" expression on his face. Interview with Ian Malik, the governor of the Lawrence Home for Boys, commencing 17th May 2019, 4:39 p.m. at Operation Appletree, TFHQ. Conducted by Supervisory Special Agent James Rodriguez. Ian Malik, you've been placed under federal arrest for embezzlement and fraud. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you do say will be used against you in a court of law. You have declined to have legal representation present at this interview. Do you understand what I've just said to you? Let's just get on with this codswallop. I've done nothing wrong, Mallick asserted, scowling at the floor. Oh, I beg to differ. We've discovered evidence that not only indicates you're embezzling hundreds of thousands of dollars from the home into an account that's registered in a tax haven country, an account that's owned by a man you don't even know from Adam, despite being listed on your employee records as working for you for the last 11 years. And this Brandon McCann, well, he's been spending that construction money like it's going out of fashion. That place doesn't look like it's had any upgrades recently, does it? It was my turn to be the arrogant and cocky one. Then you should take this conversation up with Mr. McCann. If he's spending our money, I can't keep track of every single employee and contractor. I don't know what they're up to. I'm a very busy man, but, well, let me tell you, if he's been taking money from our accounts, then I assure you I'll track him down myself. These goddamn fucking cowboys, eh? Mallick quipped with a cocky grin. Indeed, Mr. Mallick, indeed. However, we're not too interested with where the money's gone. We're more concerned with where the money's come from. Because that, Mr. Mallick, was down to you. I marked Mallick's card, causing his cocky smirk to drop and his eyes to widen. He quickly pulled his front back together and continued scowling. Oh, of course it came from me. Who the fuck else would it come from? I'm the bloody governor, for Christ's sake. That money came from surplus and legitimate funds. Not my fault some bloody chancer's stolen those poor kids' money, is it? Mallick raged at us. I stared at him intently as he sulked at the floor, until his curious gaze met mine. Ian Malik, you're being further detained for questioning in regards to the following charges: conspiracy to blackmail a public official, conspiracy to exploit sexually children, and finally, conspiracy to commit murder. Once again, you have the right to remain silent, and of course, anything you do say can be used against you in a court of law. I don't know what you're talking about, Special Agent, he growled, as his scowl became as profound as ever. I sighed, wondering where to begin. Well, let's start with the money that you just confirmed on tape that you transferred into the construction account. Now, I ask myself, why on earth would a construction fund account be registered in a tax haven country? Registered to a shell company in the name of a man who we've been unable to locate. Maybe it's because that money that's gone into that account is dirty. Very, very dirty. I shook my head slowly and tutted, continuing the mind games. Check the accounts, you smart prick. That money came from the government for looking after these wee lads with no home. I placed it into the construction account in case the bloody roof fell in or something. You know what it's like over here. Tornadoes, hurricanes. Can't be too careful, can you? Well, that's right. You're from Scotland, aren't you? Moved to the States back in 2003 at the age of 33. You see, that's what we're doing while you're sat in here nursing that coffee. We've been doing our homework on you. No family, no kids. Just before you moved to the U.S., Aberdeen PD were investigating a grooming gang operating in the city. One of the kids managed to report the abuse, and 12 individuals were brought in for questioning. One of which was you. All of you were released on bail pending investigation. However, 6 months later, 11 of the 12 individuals were charged. I wonder if you can guess which one walked, I asked sarcastically. Well, Mallick began to growl with resentment. My guess is you provided evidence on your pals to get yourself off and not be branded a pedophile. That's about the top and bottom of it, isn't it? I asked forcefully. Well, Mallick shook his head. You know fuck all about me, he growled. Oh, I think we do. In fact, we're counting on it, I said, winking with intent. I don't follow, Mallick groaned curiously. You've done it once, maybe you'd do it again, I speculated with a grin and a theatrical shrug. Mallick began to fidget in his seat, grinning and shaking his head frantically. God, I don't even know what you're talking... I cut him off immediately. What we're talking about? Yeah, I know, you said. Well, let me enlighten you, Mr. Mallick. A woman from your facility went missing a few years back, Haley Stanheld. She was a care worker here. The boy came to her with sexually inflicted injuries, caused by visitors to your establishment. She tried to report the abuse, went missing a few days later. Her body was recently found murdered in Clinton Lake. The boy who reported the abuse, one Thomas Danmore, who, after recently being arrested for the murders of 5 women, told us in a post-charge interview that he was subjected to years of systematic abuse by visitors to the home. Abuse that went undetected and uninvestigated due to complicity with members of the staff. And while, no, that doesn't specifically implicate you, what does is the fact that some of the boys who spoke up against this abuse, they were quickly adopted by loving families who seemed to just come out of nowhere, I said in a patronizing manner, whilst gesturing with my hands. Mallick just continued to glare and scowl. And the thing is, they did come out of nowhere, literally. 2 of my colleagues visited your facility yesterday. They checked your files. The reports on certain adoptions alluded to people who'd been dead for years. They were ghosts. But here's the funny thing. We checked the official register. Those adoptions never happened. In fact, those boys are still at your home according to the government records, because they're still paying you for them. And that's the money that's been going into that construction account. And here's the serious thing. There's been no sightings of any of those boys after the dates of those false reports. From another line of inquiry, we've learned that one of these boys, Ryan Thomas, was murdered and used to blackmail a coroner into falsifying autopsy reports to protect a criminal party. So given how you just admitted that it was you that put that money into that account, right now you are a prime suspect in an absolute shit sandwich. You copped to all this, and you're going down for a long, long, long time, my friend. Mallick started to sweat. I could tell by his reaction that he wasn't in the dark about any of this. Unless I grass for you, he grunted under his breath. Well, like I said, you've done it once to save your skin. I don't see why you can't. Mallick's head snapped up to face me, cutting me off. Because these aren't just a bunch of old fucking pervs wanting a cheap hookup. No, these guys, they're the sort of people you don't fucking grass on. Yeah, we've heard, I muttered. Thing is, Ian, they had a detective in their pocket who also facilitated things for them. He didn't talk either. But when he was caught and he was of no use to them, well, they killed him anyway. Burned him alive, actually, I informed him. So, imagine what they'll do if I grass, he exclaimed. The thing is, I'm banking on that little construction account of yours to be somewhat of a personal piggy bank, because our financial forensic expert examined your personal accounts. She says even with the withdrawals made by Brendan McCann, and let's be frank, that's you, your personal account shows little signs of use, that you have been in receipts of large cash sums. Now, if that's what these people have been paying you to facilitate child prostitution, then I think they'll be pretty furious if you get arrested for embezzling funds that shine a light on their activities. Well, even with a good lawyer, you might only get 2 years. But I bet that's long enough for these people to make you pay for your greed, I speculated suggestively. Mallick scoffed, indicating that I was right. But if you play ball with us, not only do you stay out of prison, but you get to keep the current balance in your little piggy bank. As long as you help us get what we need, and we don't find out you were physically complicit in the abuse. I wasn't, he snapped, genuinely offended. Well, given your past. I'm a sorter. I like money. And dirty men pay dirty money to do dirty things. Those boys back home, they were wrong-uns. They'd mug old women, break windows. I just told them that they could make sure Cass and get all the drugs and booze they could handle. Those 11 men who went down, they were the ones who did that stuff, not me. Okay, I believe you. So, what's it gonna be? Tortured and murdered in some dark prison hallway? Or keeping $95,000, your job and your freedom? I asked. My eyes narrowed slightly, trying to read him. He scowled once more, looked around the room as if trying to think of a way out of this. Okay, fine. What do you need from me, then? Mallick conceded. It took everything not to punch the air. Oh, all in good time, Mr. Mallick. First, I think we should take a break. Interview paused at 5:09 p.m. I said, pressing the pause button on the recorder. Right, I'll get you a coffee, I added. Mallick scoffed. A fucking donut, too. Okay, so there you go with chapters 4, 5, and 6. The adventure is hotting up, and we're definitely making progress now. Now, I have to admit that we still have a long way to go. Probably only about a third, maybe only a quarter of the way through this one. So, hope you're going to stick with me for the next probably 5 or 6 Sundays. Should be finished by then. And believe it or not, there's another story coming up after that, so no rest for the wicked, I might say. Well, that is enough for this Sunday evening. Back again tomorrow night with a pretty long story, I think. I'm not sure yet, but over an hour, definitely. Till then, my dear friends, very, very sweet dreams, and bye-bye. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams, and bye-bye.